Now, ever since we learned that Hayden Christensen was coming back to play Darth Vader in the upcoming Kenobi series, and that it would feature the rematch of the century, according to Kathleen Kennedy, there's been a lot of speculation about just what that all means, or how much and or in what capacity exactly would Vader be used in. Will we even see a literal rematch between the two involving some lightsabers? And look, even back before we learned Hayden would be returning, I'd already speculated or guessed that we would be seeing Vader in this series, and quite a bit. That it might even be just as much about Vader's hunt for Kenobi as it would be about Kenobi doing whatever he's doing on Tatooine at this time, which would probably, hopefully, involve him communing with or trying to commune with Qui-Gon Jinn to learn the ways of becoming a Force ghost. And I mean, from the Disney Lucasfilm perspective, what better way to pull in the numbers or get subscriptions for Disney Plus than to put two of the most popular and beloved characters in all of Star Wars, characters that obviously have quite the history with each other, to put them together in a series. It's such a no-brainer that it's hard to give them any real credit for doing this. That said, I will give them credit for bringing back Hayden, considering his performance in the prequels is, well, not celebrated by every single Star Wars fan, let's say that. There are certainly those who think he was horrible in those films, and we can debate why that may be the case or why his performance didn't resonate with everyone. Though I certainly think the script or his dialogue or the lines he had to work with, along with the direction from George Lucas, could take a good chunk, if not most, of the blame. I've seen Hayden in other things, and though I wouldn't proclaim him as one of the greatest actors of all time, he's certainly given some good performances. We can even look at Natalie Portman, who of course played opposite of him as Padme, and she too didn't give a world-class performance in the prequels, and she's even gone on to win an Oscar. In other words, if you're anywhere from hesitant to unhappy to flat-out mad that Hayden is returning as Vader, I'd say at least give the guy a chance first. Let's see what he can do with a different director, and he'll be working with Deborah Chow this time around, who has delivered some of the best episodes of The Mandalorian to date. Not to mention, and this isn't meant as an insult, though it could be construed as one I suppose, most of Hayden's best acting in the prequels came when he had nothing to do or say at all, when he had to convey everything with just a look or his expressions, other than some of the creepy looks he gave Padme in Episode 2, but let's just forget about those, even though in those cases I'd, again, place more blame on the script and directing than anything else. But of course, Hayden's facial acting or his expressions aren't going to matter one bit unless one of two things happens in the series, the first of which would be flashbacks to the Clone Wars era when he was still Anakin, and the other would be seeing Vader without the mask on. And when you think about how almost pointless it would be to bring back Hayden just to play Vader in the suit, and yeah, sure, it'd be cool to know he's in there, but it wouldn't really matter all that much. Anyway, I don't know that they'd make such a big deal out of his return or even bother with it if we weren't actually going to see Hayden, and for more than just a quick glimpse here and there when maybe the mask is being taken off, like if we see Vader in his meditation chamber or in a tank like we saw him in during Rogue One. Again, sure, it's cool to know Hayden's in the suit, and for the sake of continuity, it'd be nice to see or get glimpses of a now 15-year-older Hayden playing an older Vader, but it'd still feel like a wasted opportunity. Then when you factor in we just had this new episode of Disney Gallery, The Mandalorian, where they talk extensively about de-aging and deepfake technology and how much can be done with it these days and that they're on the verge of perfecting it. And then you also factor in they recently hired someone from YouTube who did a better version of Luke in The Mandalorian than they could pull off. Well, it seems like we'll be seeing a lot more of this sort of thing in the future, and I'd guess in the very near future with the Kenobi series. Another thing here is that even though the Clone Wars animated series did a really good job of showing the friendship between Obi-Wan and Anakin, it'd still be awesome to see some of that in live action with Ewan and Hayden. I mean, we didn't really see too much of it in the prequels. We go from the two being at odds with each other in Attack of the Clones to the tail end of a well-established friendship in Revenge of the Sith. And even Clone Wars doesn't really show us any sort of transition between the two. At the start of the series, Anakin is already a full-on Jedi Knight, and they're pretty much buddy-buddy and have put any and all differences behind them. And the fact that Anakin is sort of a rebellious Jedi who does what he wants to do a lot of the time is more played as a joke than any sort of serious issue between them or concern for Obi-Wan. And I should probably clarify and say that I'm talking about the 2008 Clone Wars series, because we actually do get some of that transition period between the two in the 2003 Tartakovsky Clone Wars series. We even see Anakin go through his trials and get knighted there. But unfortunately, none of that is still canon. though that then does leave the door open to explore that time period a bit at the very start of the Clone Wars, where we might even see that Obi-Wan had some doubts about Anakin being ready to be knighted. Either way, I think you absolutely give us some flashbacks to the Clone Wars, maybe to a time or two when Obi-Wan feels like he saw signs of possible problems with Anakin, or maybe you even explore this idea, presented in Season 7 of the Clone Wars, that Obi-Wan knew, for how long we're not sure, that Anakin and Padme were together. Maybe he seriously regrets not doing or saying anything about it then, since it was clearly a key component to Anakin's downfall, which Obi-Wan would know. The core of the whole series then could be Obi-Wan trying to come to terms with his guilt, and it's this guilt that's holding him back, preventing him from being able to commune with Qui-Gon to start his training to become a Force ghost. And it's all because he knows or believes he could have changed everything if he just maybe confronted Anakin about Padme, and that maybe those two, Anakin and Padme, would now be living happily ever after together somewhere in the galaxy, raising their two children if he had done that, instead of him, Obi-Wan, now sitting in a desert, watching over Anakin's son, hoping one day this boy will be able to stop and destroy his father, the father he feels he failed. And Obi-Wan would have been able to understand how Anakin felt and to relate to it to a good degree because of how he had felt about Satine, which is something else we could flash back to, those two, Satine and Obi-Wan, on the run from bounty hunters for like a year, which is how they met and how they basically fall in love. Though you'd really have to do a heck of a job de-aging Ewan McGregor for that, since he'd be pretty much a teenager at that point in time. And again here, I don't know that you'd bring Hayden back to do anything less than all of this, to have these flashbacks that can tie everything together. Even though there are reports or leaked concept art that show and imply that we'll be seeing Vader outside of the suit in the series, or without his helmet on and only wearing a type of breathing mask instead of a full helmet, which could be okay, I guess, depending on the context. I certainly don't want to see Vader out and about like this all the time, destroying the idea that he needs to be in his full suit to survive, that he only wears it for, I don't know, I guess intimidation purposes, or to hide his true identity, to stop anyone from possibly figuring out he was once Anakin Skywalker. Not that it would really matter all too much if the truth got out. Though I suppose it's also possible the only time he'll take off the mask is to confront Obi-Wan at some point in the series, to show him what he's done to him, I guess. If that's maybe what the rematch of the century that Kennedy promised us will be all about, a literal face-to-face meeting between the two, where we'll hear and see Hayden talking to Ewan. Which, sure, on the surface sounds kind of cool, or like it could be awesome, but I don't know that it makes a whole lot of sense considering how their encounter during A New Hope goes down and what they say to each other there. Though, yes, there is a line spoken by Vader in that movie when he first senses Kenobi is nearby on the Death Star, where he says it's a presence I've not felt since, and then he leaves it hanging. So perhaps, and maybe more likely, the rematch of the century will happen in some type of Force vision type thing, though that feels kind of cheap. And if it is a vision, then Vader doesn't have to be in his full suit. He doesn't have to be in the suit at all. He could look like Anakin, and then he could talk to Ewan as Obi-Wan, and maybe that makes everybody happy, or maybe they think that'll make everybody happy. Quite honestly, Kennedy saying that has me both terrified and excited at the same time. But regardless of that, I don't see them passing up the opportunity to put these two on screen together as much as they can, both in flashbacks and in some type of confrontation. Which, again, I'm not saying I love or hate the idea of another meeting between Vader and Kenobi. A lot will depend on how it comes about and how it plays out. But my first initial thought is this is not a good idea, that it doesn't make sense for them to meet again, but maybe they can pull it off somehow. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think about all this. Do you want to see flashbacks to the Clone Wars? Do you want to see Vader running around maskless doing who knows what? And what about another literal confrontation between him and Kenobi? Does it make sense or not? Whatever you think, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.